Welcome to the Japanese Friendship Garden in Balboa Park, San Diego, California. My name is Gordon Brodfuehrer, and I have installed a small part of my collection of contemporary Japanese ceramics focusing on Oribe ware in order to tell a bit of a story about Furuta Oribe, who was an extraordinary Renaissance man in Japan at a time of great discord, cruelty, and mayhem, which can only be compared to the War of the Roses in England, which we visit in Shakespeare's plays. Furuta Oribe was born in 1543, as it happens the same year that the Portuguese arrived. That was to be a fateful date in his life because the imports that the Portuguese brought in with their trade, the designs of fabrics from India, porcelains from Holland, all of these eventually had an effect on Oribe's aesthetic, and he eventually became an arbiter of a world of ceramics in Japan. He was born into a high-ranking samurai family. His father had been a trusted advisor to Oda Nobunaga, who was the first uniting force of Japan. Furuta went on to become a similar advisor to Toyotomi Hideyoshi, who succeeded Nobunaga after the assassination of the great man. Furuta was very involved in the tea ceremony. It's very hard for us to understand the incredible importance of the tea ceremony in Japan at this period. It was a place where politics, the fates of people, taste, future of Japanese history was determined. There had been a tea master named Sen no Rikyo who wanted to turn away from the opulence of Chinese imports and the perfection of Chinese porcelains and embrace simplicity. It's a term the Japanese refer to as wabi-sabi, something which looks like it has been used. It has a certain modest rusticity about it. And Sen no Rikyo designed tea rooms in which the samurai would have to take off their armor, take off their swords, essentially leave their egos outside of this room and come in and experience the simplicity of the tea ceremony with Sen no Rikyo. Sen no Rikyo eventually fell afoul of Hideyoshi and was compelled to commit suicide. Furuta Oribe succeeded him as Hideyoshi's tea master. He began to instruct ceramicist potters in new designs. This was because he changed the tea ceremony to make it more friendly to the samurai disposition. He certainly opened the door to the tea room. He added many windows for views of gardens and designed and furnished a multitude of small shapes for the delicacies, the foodstuffs, which were served with the tea ceremony. There is a quote by Miyako Murase from the Metropolitan Museum of Art, which I want to share with you. "Never had so many different vessel shapes and such brilliant glazes been attempted, and the profuse, uninhibited designs, both naturalistic and abstract, are so playful that they verge on what we think of as modern." To the left here of our small exhibition, you'll see some rice bowls. And these have these semi-abstract designs with iron glaze for the actual design itself, and then copper glaze for the green addition to the work. These shapes are for rice bowls. They're very simple and modest with these spontaneous designs. And these are from the 17th century. We have no idea who the potter may have been. They certainly look to have a good deal of age on them, but nevertheless, their style is consistent with that period and the same style for hundreds of years later. Many things were made of this sort, and they continued to be made in Japan for the next 500 years. But eventually, the designs became a bit more sophisticated. And here you will see some works by Makoto Yamaguchi of food plates with a much more sophisticated, more elegant design aesthetic. But still the copper glaze and the somewhat spontaneous and subjective treatment of the designs. Another design which Furuta introduced was in the tea bowls, which had been perfectly round Chinese models, and he was willfully distorting. And this tea bowl you see here is in the shape of a shoe or a clog. And that was the kind of shape which delighted Furuta Oribe and broke away from the formal traditions of Chinese art. Trays to serve food were also needed then, as they are needed now. There are two food trays here which I paired together because I have the strange conceit that the one on the left almost resembles a fish and the one on the right almost resembles a green pool with sandy shoals. So I put those two together. Takehiro Ishii is the potter of what I would call the fish plate, and Yoshinobu Morimoto is the Oribe square plate. Below that, you'll see an extraordinary piece, that's a very large tray, designed by Shotaro Hayashi, which is an absolute extravaganza of texture and glaze and color. So there's a wide range in what we call Oribe wares, but all recognizable by their design and by the glaze patterns. You'll see three rectangular plates hanging on the wall here, and those are also by Makoto Yamaguchi. They're very simple, but if you get close to them and look into them, they have this kind of uncanny feeling of depth. There's a great German painter named Gerhard Richter, whose works often have this aspect that you sense layer upon layer. And when I look at these, I sense water beneath moss, and it's amazing what these potters can achieve with their experience in glaze. You'll see that not all of these works are this cobalt dark green. Some are black, and that's called kuro oribe or black oribe. And next to the tea bowl, you'll see a vessel for drinking soju, a drink. And below that is a tall tea vessel for larger amounts of tea in a black Oribe style. Next to that is a more familiar one. And next to that is an incredible fanciful shape. It's a riff on a vessel shape called the mokozuke, which was served as a set with various small foodstuffs. I think you'd be ill-advised to try to reach into this for some food. I think you might come out with a bleeding finger or damage the object in the process. Oribe ware also extended to kakihana or wall vases, and you see one here designed by Katsuhiko Ito. Quite beautiful example of Oribe ware with an added cascade of glaze like a stream coming down a landscape. And speaking of landscapes, you'll see a very large vase by Makoto Yamaguchi with the peony inside of it, and it has the rugged shape of a mountain. It is like a piece of nature carved out, just incredibly rich in colors, in blues, azures, greens, blacks, a wonderful thing to sit and ponder. To the left of that is a small tray by Haruhiko Tsukamoto. It is another piece of nature. It almost looks like a piece of petrified wood. And he's given the name Long Dream Star plate to this piece. To the left of that is a much more monumental and ambitious and elegant piece by Shugo Takeuchi. This has extreme elegance and opulence of glaze, but it still has that strange little pattern of some vegetable or gourd or something hanging on its branches that you see in Oribe ware for 500 years. It's still that homage, that reference to that. Now above this, you'll see a piece of art which is not ceramic. This is a lithograph by my friend Joel Stewart, an artist who lives in Kyoto, who is fascinated with all aspects of Japanese culture. He's not a scholar, but he has a wonderful eye. He bicycles past a graveyard in Kyoto and he notices these lamps called toro. And it turns out that Oribe, amongst the many other things he did, was to design this shape of lamp. And there's some suspicion that he was a secret Christian, and that this somehow has some reference to the cross. The stories abound that when you look at the base stones of these beneath them, you'll see Christian inscriptions. So this is a version of this toro, which Oribe designed in a heavy snow. In Kyoto, they have something called botomochi, these very thick, moisture-laden snowflakes, which are there because of the formation of the valley, evidently. On the other side of Joel's lithograph are some more pieces by Makoto Yamaguchi, these Oribe rectangle plates. I had them mounted this way because something seems to be just kind of drifting down. They're very delicate and very beautiful, but you can see again the informality of the designs, little touches of the copper glaze, and you can imagine what a delight it is to eat food off of these plates. You know, the Japanese character is this wonderful assortment of profundity, seriousness, great love of nature, but also whimsical humor. You'll see here a pair of candlesticks And you see the Oribe glaze with these figures on top called kappas. They are a folk legend mischievous creature that lives near water, under bridges, and do things as bad as pulling children into the water, stealing things. There's some suspicion that women could be impregnated by them mysteriously. That happens in many cultures. And then these little fellows are sitting, reading a book with these little caps on their head. Now, it's not really a cap. That's part of the shapes of their heads, because the water creatures, they always had to have that little bowl on their head full of water. Otherwise, they would lose their powers. So if you're walking along a country lane and you encountered a kappa, which might be a very scary event, you were instructed to deeply bow, as the Japanese tend to do. And the kappa would deeply bow, and then the water would fall out, and he'd be entirely powerless, and you could go on your way. I love that story. This is another piece by the incredible potter Shugo Takeuchi, who lives in Mashiko but does very much his own style of ceramic. This was too big to put in the cabinets in the galleries, but I thought it would be nice to bring it out of its box and place it here in front of the beautiful koi pond. You hear the waterfall in the background here at the Japanese garden. It's a basin, a water basin, similar to those you might find Japanese temples where you do a ritual cleansing before you enter the temple. It's an amazing piece. To travel the exterior of this is an amazing journey. As a matter of fact, the potter has called this endless landscape. Each section almost looks like a complete work of art, totally different from one side to the other. There are places where it almost looks like Aboriginal cave drawings have been put on the wall of a cave. A wonderful array of colors. And we put some water in the basin, and I'm glad we did, because it suddenly brought the bottom of that basin to its very silver life. It's an extraordinary piece. I want to thank the Japanese garden for being so indulgent and helping me so much with assisting in this presentation. Well, we've seen some of these incredible varieties of Oribe ware, and to go back to Mr. Furuta Oribe, as I say, a Renaissance man, he had to become a warrior, because in those days you had to support your leader of your clan in the terrible wars which lasted 100 years. So he was a warrior, he was awarded land, and he rose through the ranks. But his real passion was for art, for redesigning the tea room, for changing the types of trees you would see in the classical Japanese garden, for creating multiple shapes and styles of ceramics for daily use, and also designing this stone lantern, which you see today all over Japan. Eventually, Hideyoshi himself lost power and was succeeded by Tokugawa Ieyasu. Tokyo, Edo became the capital, and of course still is. He was vehemently anti-Christian, and he felt that the Christians were having much too strong an influence in the country, and started a very severe persecution of Christians. It was thought that some of Oribe's family were Christian, and he was compelled to commit ritual suicide. There's a story that when he was at the siege of Osaka Castle, he got too near the battlements and was struck by an arrow or something and had a minor wound. And later that night, evidently, the samurai ridiculed him, saying that Furuta will never die in battle, he will die from a fish bone. Very sad commentary, but it also shows his incredible passion for beauty and for aesthetics. He'd only gotten near the castle battlements to examine some bamboo that he thought might make a perfect tea scoop for the tea ceremony. His passion was for art. Unfortunately, he lived at a time of great violence and had to join that world, and eventually came to his end in that world. I want to thank the people here at the Japanese Friendship Garden for their assistance in allowing me to have this overview of the traditions of Furuta Oribe, and I encourage you all to come to this magnificent garden which improves every day. Should you have any other curiosity about Furuta Oribe and would like to have further information, there's an extraordinary book called Turning Point, Oribe and the Arts of 16th Century Japan, published by the Metropolitan Museum of Art. In it you'll find an incredible wealth of information and visual splendor. Thank you.